Good Sunday evening. We're back in 1 Samuel chapter 13. Had a little mess up last week. If you was watching on Facebook, we didn't get it posted till Tuesday, but hopefully this will launch on Sunday evening at 6 o'clock, so when we usually try to do it. So chapter 13 of 1 Samuel. Well, we've got 23 verses here. Moves quickly. A lot of death and destruction in just 23 verses. Wars. Some things never change. Some of the things that never change is an interesting thing about the Bible. Some of this stuff was written 3,000 years ago or so for us, but the principles never change. It's still there. So let's see what God's got to say to us here in 1 Samuel 13. Saul reigned for a year, and he reigned for a year, sort of getting a hold of the reins. And then by the second year, when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, he starts to do some things. Saul chose him 3,000 men. He's recruiting an army now. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in Mount Bethel, and 1,000 were with his son Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. And the rest of the people he sent every man to his tent. So they've got the army out here. Saul's got 2,000 over here, and Jonathan's got 1,000 over here. And the way the battle went, it's Jonathan who comes out being the leader of his 1,000 that takes a great victory. Verse 3, Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistines. By the way, 3,000 years ago to today, Israel's still fighting the Philistines over there in Gaza and Gibeah and all these places over there. They call them Palestinians today, but the battle's going on right now. Different weapons, different times, but some things never change. So Saul's boy, Jonathan, verse 3, he smote the garrison of the Philistines that was in Gibeah, and the Philistines heard of it. And Saul blew the trumpet. Saul's been a decent guy so far, but we're going to find out he just goes worse and worse through the scriptures. Absolute power corrupts. Power corrupts. Absolute power absolutely corrupts. And he gets absolute power, and he can't handle it. So he started out kind of, looks like he was a little humble and everything, and it was just looking out for the donkeys, and Samuel finds him, and he's the people's king, the way things happened here. But now we find he's a few years into it, and he's blowing his own trumpet, as the saying goes. Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." And all Israel heard say that Saul had smitten a garrison of Philistines. Now we just read this. It wasn't Saul, it was his son Jonathan that led his 1,000, because the battle was over here. Jonathan was the hero of the battle, but it's going around now that Saul's the great and mighty leader. So Israel heard that Saul had smitten a garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel had an abomination with the Philistines. That's a Bible word you need to learn. If you read the King James Version, I don't know about the others, but the King James Version uses it all through the scriptures. Abomination. That simply means that's something that is very disgusting. And God's got a lot of things that he says is disgusting to him. In this case, it's used that because of this victory, Israel became an abomination or disgusting to the Philistines. They hated them, so they're going to get them back. And the people were called together after Saul to Gilgal. Verse 5. And the Philistines gathered themselves together. Now, see, they've been punched in the eye. So they're gathering a great army now to extract vengeance upon Israel. So the Philistines gathered themselves together to fight with Israel. 30,000 chariots. That's a big army. Now, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. I mean, they was tired of fussing with this. They was going to take care of Israel and get it over with, right? They pulled out everybody. And they came up and pitched in Michmash, eastward from Bethaven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, they were in trouble, because they only had an army of 3,000, didn't they? And the people were distressed. I would have been, wouldn't you? So what did the people do? Well, he who fights and runs away lives to fight again another day. So the people did hide themselves in caves and in thickets and rocks and high places and in pits. And some of the Hebrews, they went over Jordan. They left the country to the land of Gad and Gilead. As for Saul, he was yet in Gilgal, and all the people that followed him were trembling. And he tarried for 7 days. Samuel told him to wait on him. See, Samuel's not completely gone yet. He's working closely with Saul. Saul's the political leader. Samuel's the religious leader, and they're working hand in hand here. He tarried 7 days, according to the time set that Samuel had appointed. But Samuel didn't show up. He came not to Gilgal. And the people were scattered from him. They were leaving. And Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me, and peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering. Now, there's no saying that still applies today. Sometimes people need to learn to stay in their lane, right? Well, Saul wasn't supposed to, he wasn't the man that God had called to offer the offering. See, that was Samuel or the Levitical priest job to offer the offering. And here's the king, the political leader, says, well, I'll take that over. So he offers the offering. And it came to pass, he's asking God's blessing on him, see, but he's not in his lane here, verse 10. It came to pass that as soon as he made an end of offering the burnt offering, behold, here comes Samuel. Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him, that he might salute or greet him. And Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, well, because I saw the people were leaving. They were scattered from me, and that thou camest not within the days appointed. You said you'd be here in a week, and you were late. And that the Philistines gathered themselves together at Michmash. I couldn't, he's making excuses, see. Therefore said I, the Philistines will come down now upon me to Gilgal, and I've not made supplication to the Lord. I forced myself, therefore, and offered a burnt offering. And we're going to find out that don't fly with Samuel and don't fly with God. He had specific instructions from God through Samuel that you don't do that. I'll be there a certain number of days and I'll do it. It's the principle is kind of like stay in your lane today in your own church. You know, like you got to let the pastor be the pastor. There's some things that you can comment on and stuff, but you can't take over. And that's what Saul tried to do here. And Samuel said to Saul, thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel. For if you'd just been obedient to God, God had blessings for you. Your descendants would have been kings over Israel forever. But now, flipping the coin over, decisions have consequences, and bad decisions have bad consequences. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord sought him a man after his own heart. We're going to meet him later on in the form of David. And the Lord's commanded him to be captain over his people. David don't know none of this yet. Because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee. In other words, God's going to replace you, Saul, but because you didn't follow God's instructions. 15. And Samuel arose and gat him up from Gilgal unto Gibeah of Benjamin. And Saul numbered or counted the people that were present with him, about 600 men. Not many in the face of the opposition of the army over here, the Philistine army. And Saul and Jonathan his son and the people that were present with them, they abode in Gibeah of Benjamin. But the Philistines encamped in Michmash. So everybody's gathering together for the war. But there's a bunch of people over here with the Philistines and just a handful. I mean, it's like the sand of the seashore that can't be numbered, the scripture says, among the Philistines. But over here to Israel, not many people. And the spoilers, verse 17, the spoilers is the King James word for the raiders, came out in groups from the Philistine camps to start with. The spoilers came out of the camp of the Philistines in 3 different companies. One company turned in the way that leads to Orpah, the land of Shual. Another company turned the way to Beth-horon. Another company turned to the border and looks to the valley of Zeboim toward the wilderness. They went out over the land in 3 different groups, and they were raiding. Now, there was no smith. Blacksmith, what this is. There's no smith found throughout all the land of Israel. For the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords or spears. Now, thousands of years ago before us, but the principle is the same, and this is worth taking note of. The enemy always tries to disarm the good people because there's power. They want to have the arms, but they don't want you to have the arms. That hadn't changed today. Anybody who's trying to take the arms out of the hands of the good people are the enemy. They may just be very misguided and think they're serving God, but the devil's behind that. You can come over here in the New Testament, and Jesus, I'll quote Jesus. He said, when times were getting tough there, at one time he told the disciples, said, if you don't have a sword, you better sell your coat and get one. So if you can disarm the people, you make them powerless. And don't ever let that happen, folks. Don't ever let that happen. That's not good. They call it good, but they call evil good these days, and they call good evil. It's all mixed up and different. But the enemy's always trying to disarm the people, and that's what the Philistines had done to the nation of Israel. That they wouldn't allow them to have weapons. So they didn't have no blacksmiths. They didn't have no weapons at all. And they said, verse 20, but all the Israelites, they had to go down to the Philistines to get their farming implements and things, to sharpen every man his share and his coulter, his axe and his mattock. And they had a file for their mattocks. They didn't have no blacksmiths. They couldn't have no arms. They could have some farming implements, but they had to take them down to the Philistines to get them sharpened for the coulters and the forks and the axes and to sharpen the goads. So it came to pass in the day of battle. See, what happens? You got a whole nation disarmed now, and the enemy's arrayed for battle, and we ain't got no weapons. It came to pass in the day of battle that there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan. But Saul and Jonathan, his son, was found. It's only the elite had any weapons at all, see? The rest of them had pitchforks. And the garrison of the Philistines went out to the passage of Michmash. So we're getting arrayed for the battle here. But we'll pick up there next week. But just with a couple quick principles that we went through right there. It's like stay in your spiritual lane, or do what God's called you to do, but don't take over somebody else's lane. And secondly, remember, the enemy always wants to disarm the good people. See you next week.